Hello, yet again. Cathar Love 79, the Cathar Revolution, Part B. Cathar Revolution. One could say, why not the Gnostic Revolution? Because Catharism is a Gnostic, is part of that Gnostic philosophy. Well, the plain fact is, there is a Gnostic revolution going on and throughout the world. In fact, Gnosticism is still far more well known than Catharism. Because Gnostic scholars have been debating and discussing and analysing Gnosticism, its origins, where it's going, and looking at, let's just mention one thing. In Messina, I hope it was 66, if my memory is okay, there was this Congress on Gnosticism, and in that Congress they decided that there was basic differences between Gnosticism and Gnosis. Gnosticism applied to that particular period in the early Christian era, and basically this is the Christic Gnostic era. But there's Islamic Gnostics, the Sufis, probably the most well known, and people quote them all the time. I enjoy many of Rumi's quotes. This is Rumi, but Rumi also, I'm not too sure of his dates, but it was in 1200. He was around at the same time as when Catharism was in its bloom. And the thing about Rumi as a Islamic Gnostic, central to everything, all his talks, his poetry is about love. Love between human beings, love for the universe, love for nature. So there's a tremendous amount of parallels between Catharism and Rumi, because Catharism again is about love, universal love. Then we have, there's Gnostic aspects to Buddhism, and there's Gnostic, the Jewish, the Judaic Gnosticism. That's one of the origins, according to some scholars, that it came from when the Jews were imprisoned by the Persians, and they left Babylon, Iran, and they moved back to Jerusalem. With bringing back with them, they brought back Gnostic ideas and Gnostic thought. One of the delights, and yet it is one of the problems, of Gnosticism, because I'd like to explain why I think that the Cathar revolution will overtake whatever Gnostic revolution is going on, and I'll give you the reasons. Gnosticism is it's not so easy to define, because otherwise you wouldn't have so many scholars out to define it. And this is because Gnosticism has so many aspects to it. Early Judaic Gnosticism, the prophet Ezekiel, and he has the Lord pulled by chariots. So and he's not the only one. I mean, we have Blake, and he has his drawings, and these are visionary drawings. So there is a major aspect of Gnosticism is visionary, and the reason for that is because some things are so hard to put into words, one really needs a vision. It's symbolical. Symbols are another way of sometimes explaining something that we can't put into words. Or sometimes, put it another way, sometimes rather than try to explain it, a symbol is far better than words. Myths. The Gnostics are great for putting putting their ideas and their stories into a mythological basis, again assisting to explain a certain point of view. It's hermetic, and that was very, very big when those hermetic treatises were rediscovered in the Renaissance. So there's this aspect to it. It's alchemical. John Dee, the English Gnostic mystic and alchemist, Sir Isaac Newton, who's more well known for his materialistic theories, and but really that's 1/3 possibly of his life. 2/3 of his life was involved with mysticism, alchemy, astrology. So Carl Jung, so we have this deep inner psychological aspects with the psyche, which Carl Jung as the father of psychology. So there's all these aspects to Gnosticism, which makes it very, very hard to pigeonhole it or contain it and put it in a little nice handy little box, which we can do much easier with the Bible, because we have with the Christianity, because we have our Bible. With the Quran, we can box it neatly and say, well, this is what you do and this is what you can't do, because it's all in the Quran. Or once upon a time in China, you could what you couldn't do, because you had Mao's little back book. The Catholics had their catechism, and you were caught up in what a Catholic could do and what a Catholic couldn't do, and what a Catholic believed and what was mortal sin and so forth. It was all caught up in the Catholic catechism. Well, Gnosticism, it's sure got its share of books, and it's got a share of scholars. I mean, you've got the Nag Hammadi Bible, Elaine Padgels, I hope I'm pronouncing her surname correctly, Gusto and Stephen Holler, Hans Jonas. These are all amazing scholars. Iano Culiano, who delve deeply into the area of Gnosticism. And another reason is, and I need to quote this because I need to get it correct, so I'll Henry Corbin put it this way once in a lecture. It is one thing for a historian to propose hypotheses on the origins of Gnosis. It is another to ask ourselves the theoretical and practical significance of Gnosis for us today. Because Gnosis is not a phenomenon tied to the historical conditions of the 2nd century, Christianity, Christic Gnosticism, but a religious phenomenon perpetuating itself from century to century. And this is right, because Gnosticism is a questioning philosophy. So, one of the beauty of Gnosticism, it is so wide-ranging, and it's so all-encompassing that sometimes one feels one has to be a scholar to really get an excellent grasp of it. So, it's certainly for a thinking person, because you have to read and think before one can arrive at a decision about Gnosticism. And it's more, I feel, initially it's more of the mind. Catharism, which is a Gnostic fish, but a different variety. Catharism, medieval Catharism, which was at the turn of the millennium, which blossomed and bloomed for a couple hundred years, it was contained. It had, its essence was universal and unconditional love for everybody and everything. There was no argument with Catharism that they had a source. that they yearned whence they came from, their divine spark, which came from the source, and they yearned desperately for reunion with the source. They had very few rituals, but they had a number. They had very few sacraments, but they had one or two. There was certainly the consolamentum, and that was when a person was consoled, and that's when all their sins were forgiven if they had committed any sins, which not everything that Christian thought was sin to a Cathar, but nonetheless. And from that point onwards, you expected not to sin until you died. So most people didn't take the consolamentum until it was when they were about to die. Had very few rituals, but it had it did have one or two rituals, but these rituals were more to increase your spirituality, your mystic side of the mystic side of your belief. So Catharism is far easier to contain. It's egalitarian. Now, in 1967, don't hold me to the date, but there was a Colin Bloy, he's since passed away, and he was where the Cathars were burnt at the base of Montsegur. And he's a dowser, and he discovered some text or something there. But 7 or 8 years later, he said these words aren't his own, but he set down these words as they came to him, and it really contains, in a very lovely way, many or all of the aspects of Cathar philosophic thought. I can find it. Here. So, rather than me try to express some things, I'll just read a couple of things here to show you the essence of Catharism and how people today can relate to Catharism far more easy than relating to the wide-ranging, all-encompassing aspects of Gnosticism. This is not saying that one's better or worse or whatever, but the Catharism is far more of a system that we can embrace, and not just embrace intellectually. It's easier to embrace at an emotional, at the level of the heart, rather than the mind. I read a few from Colin Bloy. It has no fabric, only understanding. It has no rivals, because it is non-competitive. It has no ambition, because it seeks only to serve. It knows of no boundaries, for nationalisms are unloving. It is not of itself, because it seeks to enrich all groups and all religions. It acknowledges all great teachers of all ages who have shown the truth of love. I'll move on and just take a few. There is no walk of life or nationality that is a barrier. It recognizes the collectivity of all humanity, and that we are all one with the one. This is pure Gnosticism. It's certainly very, very pure Catharism. We are one with the one. We came from the one. We're a divine spark, like a spark from a flame, and we will return to that flame. It recognizes the whole planet as a being, as an entity, of which we are but a part. It does not proclaim itself with a loud voice, but in the subtle realms of loving. It admits no hierarchy or structure, for no one is greater than another. Egalitarian. Once you're a Cathar, and this was in a feudal period when everybody was subject to everybody else, had allegiance to somebody else, Pope, Cardinal, Bishop, etc., Emperor, King, Lord, Knight, etc. And suddenly here are these Cathars, rich or poor, highborn or lowborn, everybody's equal. So its members shall know each other by their deeds, and by being, and their eyes, and by no other outward side, save the fraternal embrace. A hug. As someone said, there's not enough hugs in the world. Another person said, which I thought was rather nice, he said, what's the wonderful thing about a hug is the fact that it brings two hearts together in a physical sense. It has no records to offer, either here or in the hereafter. I'll say that again. It has no rewards to offer, either here or in the hereafter. Say that of the ineffable joy of being and loving. Being means being yourself, self-realization, getting to love who you are. They shall do good by stealth and teach only by example. So in other words, if you're doing something good, you don't go around and boast, hey, I did this, I did that, I sent a check off to Nepal for $500 or whatever it happens to be. You do it, and it's something that you do, and it's between you and yourself. And teach by example. So that doesn't say much for me. I'm here talking on YouTube. So, but we've got the message. If we are, and we're happy and we're enjoying life and we feel good and we're doing the good things and we're caring and we're loving, example is the greatest teacher. I'll give you one more. They shall know no fear and feel no shame, and their witness shall prevail over all odds. So, as only the Boers said, when it's all boiled down, there's really nothing to fear. The worst thing that can happen is death, and death's a damn good thing because it's opening the door to another state of being, and it's a different state of being, but it's our real home over there. And before we reincarnate, if we are going to reincarnate, and for most of us they will, I personally want to reincarnate because my life is the purpose in my life at the moment, or major purpose in my life at the moment, is to promote Catharism, and so this is helping lay out the groundwork. I'm not the only person, there are others throughout the world, of course, and there's little islands of Catharism, islands of love here and there, and they're growing, but I rather than just be a spirit looking down, I'd like to be back and just see Catharism really blossom, and because it's such a good thing for the world. So with this Cathar revolution, I'm putting the point forward that there is a Gnostic revolution going on, but I believe Catharism, because Catharism can be more easily defined, it's something that people can be attracted to at not just a mindful level, but at an emotional level. And it's to do with unconditional and universal love. And the world can sure do with as much as that as it could possibly have. Bye for now. I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.